What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Big Five Pod, episode number 108. And Cope, we were literally just talking 2 seconds before this, and we forgot what episode it was because it's been a little bit too long. So we apologize for that. But some of us had to leave the country for a little bit. Some of us were sick too. It's that time of year. So we're back at it, though. The swing of things is very much intact still, even though we have not been here to tell you all about it, but now we're back. So I'm, of course, your co-host, Kyle Morello. We got co-host Jake Kopsick next to me. Cope, it is good to be back, man. How you doing?
Yeah, it's good to be back. I think I remember who you are. If not, if this is the first time we're meeting, it's a pleasure. It's
Yeah, you
very
look a
nice.
little familiar.
I would say, I haven't seen this guy in a while. He shaved his beard, like he's clean shaven now. Totally different man.
I'm not
Totally
clean
different guy.
shaven. I did
What?
accidentally turn up the notch on my trimmer a little bit by accident. Usually it's a one, two, three. Usually I keep it at a two. And it was my first time shaving since I got back from the trip. And I guess in my luggage, in my suitcase, it changed to a one, and I didn't realize till after I started. And I was like, you know what? Whatever, we're keeping it. It'll grow
Yeah,
back. Tear.
it's a little, and it will for you. You always have a thick beard going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look a lot different, man. So
We're
yeah,
trying
but
something.
good to be back. Good to have you back. It's been a while.
It has been way too long. We had our first spaces back, at least for me. You kept doing spaces with Riley and with Aaron. My first spaces back was this Sunday, which was awesome. And Cope, we'll talk about it in a second too. I know you have that as part of your quick hitters here, not to bury the lead or anything, but yeah, it's good to be back. Good to be talking ball. It was definitely a little bit hard keeping up overseas with some of the ball. I caught up a little bit, but when the primetime games start at 7 and it's midnight and you're getting ready to go to bed, it's a little hard. It's a little hard, but shout out to London, shout out to Lisbon. Uh, Great places to go if you have not and want to go somewhere in Europe. Definitely recommend those, especially Lisbon. I was very impressed. London, I feel like I kind of knew what I was getting into. Lisbon, I did not. It was beautiful. Very temperate climate. And I got the sick jersey, dude, this Benfica jersey. It's got the constellations of the day in which the club was founded in 1904. So, good stuff, good stuff. But Cope, we can talk about footy any other time. We can talk about Europe any other time. Although I will say real quick, as life altering as a VCU home game at the Siegel Center, I've done both in the last 2 months. Uh, I can't say more life altering at the Siegel Center than Europe because Europe's pretty cool, but obviously shout out to John Rothstein and VCU as well. All right, Cope, quick hitters. Let's get into it. I'm sure we have a little bit to go over. First and foremost, about our live show at Puddler's Kitchen. We wanted to give a shout out to them. I'll let you take the bulk of that, but definitely thank you for hosting us. But Cope, quick hitters, grab that ball, run that break. Let's do it.
Yeah, I want to touch on that first. Not only do I have to probably wipe some dust off this thing, but even for a never flat ball, it's been a while. This thing might need some air. I don't even know if there's any. There is a place you can put air in this thing. That's how long it's been, Kyle. That's how long it's been with this thing. So, but yeah, I do want to give a shout out to Puddler's Kitchen and Tap in Bridgeport. Uh, big thank you to Glenn Macdam, everybody there that let me, Kyle, and Aaron set up our spacious show upstairs and broadcast live from there. We're hoping to do another one in the next month. I would hope we can maybe do one more this college basketball season, but great spot. I'll have to go there again for sure. We were there pretty late on Sunday, right before they closed, so hopefully we can get back there. But thank you to everybody there that let us do that, and we can get back on the road soon. Not too much, Kyle, believe it or not. Really not too much. And we're going to talk some player news here. So Steven Solano, he's back for St. Joseph's. He's going to ramp up a return to team activities. And what's good is he'll be back on the practice court with the Hawks, but he will not be playing in any more games this season. So that was announced just last week on Wednesday, January 29th, same day as the Hawks 76-72 home win over Duquesne. He was back out on the court. He had not been on the bench. He had been for a little bit in street clothes, and then he was not with the team, but he is back on the bench, albeit in street clothes, but he will not be playing again this season. Only appeared in 6 games, averaged 3 points per game, 3 rebounds. This is grounds for a red shirt. We don't know the reason why he was out. I don't know if that's going to play into it at all. But in terms of games, strictly that. Played in less than 30% of the Hawks games, of course, only playing 6. So this is grounds for a red shirt that hopefully he can get back. But we will see him with the program. We will not see him back on the court. But good to know that if there was a serious issue off the court, he is back, and that is resolved enough for him to be back. So good for him. He will not be back though, which is a shame because he did really show promise. I mean, I always bring up the Penn game when St. Joe's went to the Palestra and routed the Quakers. I mean, he really did play well in that game, and you saw a glimpse of what he could be on Hawk Hill. So that is the end of Steven Solano's season for this year, unfortunately, though, although he is back with the program as he ramps up back to basketball activities at some point. Next, Kyle, Nana Njoku for Villanova. He's going to miss the rest of the season following knee surgery. He underwent a successful arthroscopic surgery on his left knee on Wednesday, January 15th. It was announced he would miss the remainder of the season shortly thereafter. Last game he played in was against Fairleigh Dickinson on December 15th. He had missed a handful of games afterwards. Seemed like this was just kind of it built up. It's not like it was like one instance. It just, he hasn't played a lot. And you can't blame the guy for wanting to play through injuries. Played in 34 games for Villanova over 4 years, the redshirt junior from Delaware. Second straight year that an arthroscopic knee surgery has ended his season. He actually had his right knee operated on January of last year. So, he's had 2 surgeries in the span of a year, essentially, on his knees. So tough for a big guy with those. I mean, I'm far from a doctor, but I'm just saying, look at the big fella that plays for the Sixers and his knees that can be really, really problematic. But we wish him all the best. We saw a similar situation with Trey Patterson last year, where he had a hip surgery his one of his seasons at Villanova, and just the injuries mounted up. And it's a shame when you have a guy that's a highly touted local guy come in and injuries derail his career up to this point. So he will not be available for Villanova the rest of the season. And with that, Kyle, we've been out a while. There's a lot to go over. There's a lot to preview. Why don't we focus our time on that? A couple quick hitters. Now we can finally get into some games. It's been a while since we've done this.
Let's get into some games, Cope. Let's get into some teams. Of course, we're gonna do a little winners and losers here. It's been a couple weeks or so since we've had an episode, so this can kind of be more all-encompassing of the last couple of weeks, but also if we want to talk about specifics of the last week since it's fresh in our minds as well, we can do that. But Cope, let's start off with some winners here. What do you got for me?
I'm going to go 2 from the same school. That would be Temple as a whole, and that would be Jamal Mashburn Jr.,
Pretty
who's
easy
now the
choice.
second leading scorer in the country. Isn't it crazy? We have 2 guys in the Big Five, you have Eric Dixon and Jamal Mashburn, that are the 2 leading scorers in America.
Wild.
So
Wild.
think about all the points that guy has scored, all the big games that Jamal Mashburn has scored. How about all the big games he's had just for Temple this year? They squeak out a win over Charlotte in double overtime last Wednesday, and then they played another overtime game when East Carolina came on Saturday. So 2 games where they've had to play some extra minutes. They've been a little bit banged up. He goes for a career-high 34 in the Charlotte game, and then he had 32 in the East Carolina game. So back-to-back 30 pieces from Mr. Mashburn. Temple 10-0, Kyle. 10-0 at the Liacouras Center. So bravo to them. And how about 2 games where they were trailing in regulation? It's not like they blew a lead or anything. Like they were trailing in regulation in a dogfight both games, and they came out victorious in the end. So even with some injuries, guys being banged up, guys probably playing through injury at this point in the season. Zion Stanford has been really good off the bench. Steve Settle's been really efficient the last couple games. And how about an interesting stat from the ECU game? 5 guys scored in double figures, and then nobody else scored. Pretty interesting to see
Weird.
that for Temple. You had Steve Settle with 16, 21 from Quante Berry, who how about how good he's been? I mean, I said it on the Spaces show Sunday. Quante Berry's the most improved player in the Big Five. Probably by a wide margin at that, too. He has been terrific for Temple this year, scoring as a sidekick to Jamal Mashburn, if you will. He had 21 in this game. Mentioned Mashburn with the 32, 10 of 16 in the ECU game as well. Guy's been efficient, 10 of 13 from the free throw line, been getting there as well. 10 from Elijah Gray and 19 for Zion Stanford, who I've said time and time again, this is the X factor. This is the swing piece for this team. That guy can go get buckets. We saw it in the Drexel game. We've seen it the last handful of games for him. If he can come off the bench and get to that spin move inside the arc, get to his spots, pull up and rise up over people and attack the basket, this Temple team's going to have some serious firepower at the guard spot if he's going to continue to do that and give them a serious lift off the bench because they did not have Shane Dezonie in this ECU game, who had been that catalyst for them rebounding and scoring the ball when he had to. So you'd like to see Temple win on the road more because that's how they can separate themselves. We know how good of a team they are at home. They don't have a blemish on their record at the Liacouras Center. But if this team can be what we think they are, currently they're fourth. I've harped all year. This is a top five team in this conference. They have a really tough game coming up against Memphis we could touch on. But 2 games out of first place. Memphis, the only loss they have on their resume is Temple. But been a great start to conference play. 6-3, 10-0 at home. Really good week for them, having to play some extra basketball in there as well. They have the best player on the court for most games they're going to play in with Mr. Mashburn. 14-8, 6-3 in the conference, an undefeated record at home for the Temple Owls to the Liacouras Center. So back-to-back 30 bombs from Mr. Mashburn, back-to-back overtime wins for Temple. They were my winner of the last week. 2 gutsy performances by them to pull them out.
Very good. Very good. Cope, unfortunately, that was going to be mine because there's not a lot to choose from right now. I'm going to be completely honest with you. And we're not usually negative people. And I'm going to try not to be negative, of course, here, but I'm having a tough time. I am going to go with 2 players who I think are deserving of this, probably for different reasons. And you'll see why, especially for the second one. The first one, though, I want to give a shout out to Sam Brown. I think Sam Brown is a winner. And even though Penn has not won a lot at all, but they did have a couple of wins while I was away. So that was, you know, of the teams that I could have picked, I think they had, you know, maybe the only consecutive wins other than Temple in this stretch. But Sam Brown seems like he's found his 3-point shot. I'm going to read you some stats here from his last 4 games. Um, Against Harvard on January 20th, 3-7 from three. Against Columbia on the 25th, he had 30 points and was 8 of 10 from three. Against Brown, not as great as a game. He had 13 points, but only 3 of 10 from three. And then against Yale, 3 of 7 from three as well, another 13 points. And has scored double figures now in 6 straight games if you go back to the January 11th game against Dartmouth. So, we've talked about the 3-point regression from Penn as a whole, and Sam Brown was a big part of that. He shot over 40% last year. He was among the better 3-point shooters in the country. Has not happened like that this season. But it's good to see him starting to regress back to his mean, which is a good 3-point shooter. And I still think like the 3-point shot, like his actual shot, still looked good throughout all of this. They just were not falling. I don't know if it was confidence. I don't know if it was, a slight tweak in something that maybe we couldn't see, but he's been playing a lot better lately. So I definitely want to give a shout out to Sam Brown. I think he's a winner for getting his shot back and hopefully can lead Penn to somewhere decent. I mean, Penn's still only a game out of a top 4 spot in the conference, which is wild. So Sam Brown, winner. And Rasheer Fleming, I'm going to go winner. And I don't think it's necessarily because of his actual games. I mean, I actually don't think he's, as a whole, has like wowed like as more than he normally does lately. I mean, he's always wow, but like especially on the offensive end. But I'm going to say it like this because since conference play started, since St. Joe's win against UMass on December 31st, they've gone 3-6 in the conference, which obviously we're not expecting, even though we know this team's inconsistent, we weren't expecting them to be quite this inconsistent in conference play, especially for some games late that they could have pulled out. Loyola Chicago being the last one that they lost by 3 points in a game where they won by almost 40 on their home floor just a few weeks ago. Dayton game was a close game, 5 points. That OT game against Duquesne in Pittsburgh, they probably should have won that one. So like, there's some of these thin margins, but I think Rasheer Fleming's a winner, and this isn't. I'm not trying to like paint a bad picture here, but I think it's proven that St. Joe's needs to involve him more in the offense because the last few games against Loyola Chicago only took 6 shots against their win and they're winning over Duquesne. Now, of course, they won, but only took 8 shots. Only took 11 against Dayton before that. Only took 8 against Davidson before that in their win, and then 15 against VSU in the loss. So that was his highest output in this stretch. They need to get him more involved in the offense. I think he like minimum needs to be taking 11, 12 shots a game. He, as talented as he is on the defensive end, and we talk about his wingspan and his intangibles and all that stuff, His 3-point shots improved greatly this year. He's shooting over 40%. And he can still get to the rim with the best of them. He's the best NBA prospect on the team, maybe the league in the 8-10. And I'm not saying this is necessarily a win for Rasheer Fleming that his team is losing, but maybe it's going to be a win for St. Joe's overall when they realize, like, hey, maybe we're not doing so well because this is the guy we need to focus the offense on right now. Because we've talked about it before, especially with 3-point shooting discrepancies. When they're on, of course. But when they're off, like they cannot find another way to win other than that game against Duquesne recently, which they should because I think they're a lot better than Duquesne. So I think it's a win if they can figure out a way to make him more involved in the offense because I think that will help them tremendously raise their offensive ceiling and get him more involved. And who knows, maybe it'll keep him even more focused on the defensive end. Not saying he's not focused, but get him even more involved and have them win basketball games because this team is way too talented to be losing at the rate that they are in this league. They are a top 4, 5 team in this league talent wise, maybe even higher, and they're not playing like it. So I think involving Rasheer Fleming more on the offense would be a win. So hopefully that turns into it. I know it's a little bit of a weird one. I'll probably in this graphic only put Sam Brown, but I think it's a win if they can get Rasheer Fleming more involved, and hopefully this lets them focus on that too.
Yeah, no, I mean, agreed. Been banging that drum all year. They need to get him more involved. Shocking that he took 6 shots against Loyola. And how about our guy Matt Dunn crunching the numbers?
Yeah,
Back-to-back games where St. Joe's only makes 3 3-pointers, and they split, which I think honestly you'll take. You'll if the 3-pointers is gonna not fall at that rate, you'll take that. They have to find ways to win otherwise. He also put a nice thread out about just a bunch of numbers about St. Joe's, but Rasheer, like, look at his shooting percentages relative to the D1 average at the rim from the 3-point line. I mean, this dude just shatters percentages of the average player because that's not what he is. He is way better than, he's an elite, a very, very good elite college player when you look at his how efficient he is and his metrics. And Matt said that, hey, you need to cherish him while he's here. Not often do you see guys as talented as that come across, and not just nothing against St. Joe's, but how about just this league? It's a good league.
yeah,
Not often do you see guys like this come around. So hopefully he gets involved more. I will be there Friday when they play St. Louis. That's a 9 o'clock tip time. I don't know whose decision that was. I don't know who keeps screwing St. Joe's over with these wild tip
that's a
times.
weird tip
I
time.
go to Brooklyn, they tip at like 9:30. Probably was closer to quarter 10, honestly. They tipped at 5 o'clock against Villanova while still at work. They're tipping here at 9. They'll play your noon game. They'll play your 2 o'clock game. They have to have some record here for like most tip times in a season or something. Just a wonky schedule. I want to touch on Penn just before we move on, Kyle, because I was at their game. I did a doubleheader Saturday. First one I've done this year. I'm a little surprised that that's the case, but was at the Palestra Saturday to see them play Yale, and they got blown out. They really weren't in the game, but you blink and it's 20-4 Yale, and they're making everything. They shot around 70% in the first half. But it was a very workmanlike win for them, and that's what James Jones said in the press conference after. And I'll say this again because this is a team that upset Auburn in the first round of the tournament last year and, won the Ivy League tournament at the death against Brown. They upset Auburn. And although they lose Danny Wolf, who's balling out at Michigan,
Yeah, my God.
this team still checks a lot of boxes that if they're going to win the Ivy League tournament, which they're the only undefeated team right now, they've won 7 straight games, 6 in the league. They check a lot of boxes to be a Cinderella for you. They're top 100 in 3-point percentage. They're top 100 in free throw percentage, and they'll make free throws. Samson Alaton is a nice rim protector to have. They have the best defense in the Ivy League. He's a big reason for that. A bigger reason for that is Bez Mbang is probably going to be the 3-time reigning Ivy League Defensive Player of the Year. So you have a rim protector in Samson Alaton. You have a lockdown defender, Bez Mbang, who's going to make life hell for your best guard. John Poulikitis was dominant in this game. He had 21, 9 of 9 from the free throw line, 5 of 10 from the field, 2 of 5 from the 3-point line. His jump shot is as buttery, silky smooth as you will see. Last year when Yale came to Penn, and and I was working there. Like I just watched him warm up and just like the rotation of the ball, how quick it is. He can shoot off a movement. He's a terrific offensive engine. So you have a go-to scorer. You have a lockdown defender on the perimeter. You have a rim protector. And Steve Donahue raved about how much of an improved player Nick Townsend is at the power forward spot. He's built like a sack of flour. That's the only way I can describe him. He's a stocky, compact, really strong guy who now is a 40% three-point shooter. So you have a guy that'll punish a mismatch in the paint and will just overpower smaller guards and was 2 or 3 from the three-point line in this game and is shooting 40% from the three-point line for the year. And that's only on a little under 2 attempts a game. But still, to have a guy who can stretch the floor and bully you down low, and that gave Penn a lot of problems. Nick Townsend's inside out, especially inside ability, really hurt Penn because with Yale playing with Townsend, who's a true four, and Alaton, who's a true five, and then you look at Penn, who plays with four guards essentially around Nick Spinoso. The first play Yale had, they went right to Nick Townsend, who George Smith was guarding. And George Smith's a tough dude who plays bigger than his stature. But Nick Townsend's just again this. If you saw a picture of him, you saw him play, you would agree with me with the sack of flour comparison with how compact and how big the guy
I
is.
haven't, but I'm gonna
And
have to now.
the combination that Yale has playing a true four and a true five, whereas Penn plays the four guards around Spinoso, that gave them a lot of problems, and they had to play two bigs, and they had to play Michelangelo Berti, they had to play Braden Foster, and they had to play some younger guys who just weren't ready to play against a veteran team like that. And that gave Penn a lot of problems in this game. I asked Steve Donahue about it, and he was like, hey, like our hand is kind of forced a little bit the way that they play, playing with a true 4-5 who they're looking to bully that mismatch. So a very impressive Yale team once again under James Jones. And if they do make the tournament, Kyle, and they're in a bracket once again, I know they busted yours last year. I'm not trying to break your balls over that, but they check a lot of boxes as to a team that could ruin your bracket once again. So I get it was a 29-point game. This was all about Yale. This was not about Penn. Ethan Roberts had a good game. Once again, 19 points, 8 of 17. It's a shame that Penn is not a better team, so we can highlight how well he is playing. He has been, as advertised, has been a terrific scorer for Penn. But this was all Yale, a workmanlike performance, 57% from the field, 53.3% from the three-point line, made 18 to 22 free throws. They shot the ball really well, played well in pretty much every single area of this game. Couple turnovers I'm sure they'd like to have back, but there's a team once again, Kyle. They could make a lot of people scream at the TV and light their brackets on fire if they can get there once again. You got to circle them. Really, really good Yale team once again. They still have the experience of guys that have been there, and they do a lot of things well that you'd look for in a Cinderella.
It would appear so, and I'm familiar with that, even though obviously I don't have Danny Wolf anymore. But Cope, now you got me thinking about last year's bracket again. And I'm not going to go on too much of a tangent, but I will say, according to Ken Palm analytically last year and all those things, Auburn was like a top five team in the country, and they were a 5 seed, 4 seed, 5 seed. I forget exactly what Yale was. I think
That
it
was
was
a four. That was a 4-13.
4-13. Yeah, still, which was like the same formula the year before that UConn was, where they were like a top five team analytically, but they were a 4 seed. I love those spots, and I was like, you know what? They're going to go to the final, and it was a leverage play. And not that I was trying to outsmart everybody, but I thought that that was a good spot, and it didn't work. It didn't work. So you were right. You were right. Listen, shout out to Yale. Yeah, the Ivy League is always busting brackets. Princeton a couple years ago when they made the Sweet 16. Yale.
Or
There's
don't
been
forget Steve Donahue made a Sweet 16 at Cornell.
yes, you did. Yes, you did exactly. So it's everybody wants to discount the Ivy League because it's the nerds. Uh, they're good at basketball.
It's good basketball.
It's really good
Ball knowers
basketball.
respect this league
Ball knowers
a lot.
respect the Ivy League. You're absolutely right. Another league that ball knowers respect Cope would be the Big East, obviously. But that's where I'm going to go with my loser of the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to go with Villanova. And it pains me to say, Cope, because Nova was on fire in late December, really all of December and early January, except for that one, of course, we always mention it, the Creighton game. They were coming off a 2-point win at UConn at home. at the Finn, not the Wells Fargo, at the Finn. First time in a while they played them there. They were going up to the Garden to play St. John's, and that win, if they would have won that game, probably would have entered them into tournament and bubble talks. They were on the bubble, but would have entered them into probably first four out, last four in discussions. They lose a tight one. Well, it ended up being 12, but it was tight for a while. And Cope, since that St. John's loss, they have lost four or five. Two of them in excruciating fashion. Obviously to Georgetown where they blew a lead, and uh, I still don't know how they lost that game. I was overseas then, and I still don't know how they lost the game. I woke up very confused. And to Creighton, which you were there for last week, and you could touch after I'm done here, where Ashworth hit that game winner. It was the weird timeout thing where he was in the air trying to call a timeout. Um, and of course Marquette in between that too, where they went up there and to the Pfizer Forum and lost. But yeah, it's frustrating. And another close loss there too, Xavier. So like they've been in these games. They've been in a lot of tight games. Even their one win in that stretch was a 2-point win at home against Providence. Um, but I think they're still my biggest losers because like these are, especially at home, these are games you have to win. These are games that you have to close out against Georgetown and Creighton. Especially Creighton, who's been playing well. That would have been actually a nice win for them. Get them back in, hopefully discussions and being at large. That's done now, obviously. I mean, they're 12 and 10. But if they would have been 14 and 8, if you take that Georgetown and Creighton game and make them wins, they're still not dead at that point. Now you got to think that they are, and that's why they're my biggest loser the last couple of weeks because that's just killer. I mean, this team, I think, has the talent to be a bubble like team, a team that could make the tournament. They were playing like it certainly for a good stretch there. They'd really turned around the ship from earlier in the season where they had that Maryland loss, of course, which would have looked a lot better now. Maryland's on fire. Loss to Virginia, the loss to St. Joe's, obviously, and Columbia, of all teams, too. So, and again, no disrespect to the Ivy League. The Ivy League's awesome, but Columbia's not one of the best teams in the Ivy League. If you're going to lose to an Ivy League team, let it be Princeton or Cornell or Yale. So, there's been some bad losses, and they started to make up for it, obviously, with the Temple win, Cincinnati, all the Big East wins we had mentioned before. Now it's kind of fallen back on the sword a little bit. So it's unfortunate. I think that this offense has the potential and would have had the potential to be like a pretty dangerous team in the tournament if they were to have gotten there. Defense has not quite lived up to it though. And at this point, they're going to be a middling team in the Big East. If they can win a game in the tournament, Big East tournament, and see what happens, like that's great. But I don't see them going all that far, which is unfortunate because I think this team has a talent too. So they're my biggest loser of this week. Cope, what say you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd have to agree with. I could throw Drexel in there, and I'll touch on them slightly after I cover Villanova here. But I was at this game Saturday afternoon, and defensively, it's been a struggle for Villanova. But Creighton had 18 turnovers in this game. They had 21 points off turnovers. Did Villanova? They capitalized, and the very end of this game. Now, first of all, Villanova's up 50-45 at one point. I feel like that's when they had to put them away. But for a day where it wasn't Villanova's best offensive day, it was that defense that kept them in it. Wooga Poplar was unstoppable at times in this game. Wooga Poplar willed them to a lead, willed them back into this game when not that Creighton was ever up a ton of points, but it was Wooga Poplar that when the rest of the offense was struggling, that was him carrying them. Some people just couldn't stay in front of him. The bounce and the first step and the quickness that this guy have are unbelievable. He had 5 steals in this game as well. And it was very fitting at the end of the game that with about 18 seconds left or so, it was Wooga Poplar who got a steal and a slam to put Villanova ahead. And I said that it seems like an appropriate way for them to potentially win this game is off of the story of the day was that, and for it to end that way. Stephen Ashworth comes down. He airballs a 3. Jason Green, who had struggled all day, made a great play to retrieve that rebound and in the air, call a timeout. That's the rule now. You can call a timeout in the air, but it's kind of a gray area to me. Did he get the timeout off? Did he have possession of the ball when he tries to put the ball in this arm and call a timeout at the same time? Like that was the call on the floor. Creighton capitalized off it with a terrific inbounds play, which they, had an option to go for a 3 there, only down 1. Whole arena's thinking lob to Kalkbrenner. It was an excellent back screen, if you will, by Ashworth to just affect Kalkbrenner's man a little bit. He flares out to the corner, wide open. And the thing is, the media section at Wells Fargo and Nova plays there. It is behind Villanova's basket, opposite the bench. So I'm literally the opposite corner away from where whole media section, opposite corner away from where Ashworth is shooting that three. I didn't realize he kissed it off the glass from the
Yeah.
corner until I saw a replay. And you see that, and it's even more unlucky for Villanova, who, the defense kept him in it. Offensively, they were struggling, but the ball pressure that they had in creating steals, 3 steals for Tyler Perkins, even though he only had 4 points off the bench, which I'll touch on in a second here. But Eric Dixon dribbles the ball off his foot. Had still had 17, although he's only 5 of 14. It's really unfortunate for them to lose this way on that shot of all things. I mean, Greg McDermott had even said, think about how long he's been in basketball. He'd never seen that before to win a game, kissing it off the glass. Funny story. He said he's a coin in his pocket that somebody gave him when his mother passed away, unfortunately, and it says, "Wherever you go, I go." And he said he was clenching that thing when that shot went up and it fell. An inch farther to the left, Kyle, that thing careens off the backboard right back at Stephen Ashworth, but caught the backboard from the corner at a good angle and sunk Villanova here. So unfortunate way to lose that. But Josiah Mosley's out for this game. Jordan Dumont is called in to play. Chris Parker hit the side of the backboard on his first 3-point attempt. He only played 7 minutes. He just didn't look right. He didn't look right in this game. I wonder if he's battling through something or trying to play through an injury, because he did not look right. So you had Tyler Perkins play 33 minutes. Dumont played 14. Tough spot for him to be thrown into. But there just wasn't enough scoring depth here. Brickus had 4 points. Longino was 4 for 11. Boachi didn't score, and it came from 2 guys. Came from Muga Poplar and Eric Dixon. And not having Mosley and not having the bench lift that Perkins has been giving him as he struggled for about a month now, it's tough to have to pin on 2 or 3 guys here. So an unfortunate loss for Nova because they scrapped. And if I would have told you that Creighton would have shot 6 of 26 from the 3-point line this game, you probably would have thought they would have won. Probably would have thought they would have won. So it was an ugly game, unlike the one they played in Omaha that was a shootout. And unfortunately, another late game, another end of game, not collapse, but just an end of game, mishap, missing a switch on that inbounds play that was drawn up really well. And, just another game they couldn't close out. That's going to haunt them as we get into, almost the conference tournament time here, Kyle. We have not
We
even
are
a month until
close.
March this year. It's crazy, but just it's another loss that is really going to haunt these guys. Touch on Drexel real quick before I get back to you. Drexel lost a double overtime shootout at Monmouth. Abdi Bashir's is a top 5 scorer in America. He went off in this game. Monmouth, the other guard they had to put up a bunch of points, Madison, they're at 40. I think it's Ocean Bank Arena. Is that what I think it's called at Monmouth? Had 40 points, 19 and 19 from the free throw line. Drexel just didn't have an answer for him. But here's another reason why Drexel's a loser, and it's not Drexel. This is CAA's fault. This game was on NBC Sports Philly, which is nice that it wasn't on Flow Sports. Or like you could get it somewhere other than Flow Sports. You could actually watch this. Because 2 of the last 3 Thursdays, Drexel has been the only Big 5 team on said Thursday. So I've, guy like me, that's perfect opportunity for me to watch them when they're standalone. Couldn't when they were at Northeasterns, they were on Flow Sports. Was able to because they were on NBC Sports Philly, so I was able to tune into this one. And I guess it was the B team, or it was produced by Monmouth staff. Drexel's down 18. They come all the way back to force overtime, and right as they inbound the ball that ended in a Shane Blakeney 3 to force overtime, the stream craps out and they go to commercial, and it comes right back in. As it's like, oh, what a shot by Shane Blakeney. Same thing happened in overtime. Can we please get a real TV deal? Can we please go to ESPN Plus? And ESPN Plus is not without its flaws. If you've seen a game at Tom Goal Arena, there's all sorts of camera malfunctions at times. But come on, man. I tune into the Drexel's on national TV, so I'm able to watch them. And like, there's this blunder in a great game, and I miss a 3-pointer. Come on, man. Just
Brutal.
go to ESPN Plus.
Listen, you got to hit up
What are
the
we
powers
doing?
that be in the coastal.
Sorry, I we could be here all night, Kyle.
I know. And now how you feel about flow hoops, flow college, flow sports, the whole
It's
flow company?
legitimately one of the worst things to happen to college athletics. Legitimately, it is. $30 for some non-revenue sports or D2, D3 JUCO or whatever for parents to watch their children play, and the product itself just isn't that good. It's horrible. Horrible what's going on with that.
This is up there with like your Burger King hatred. This is next level. And I
Look,
respect that. You're
you
right. But
want people like me to tune into your product and watch your games. But for $30 a month, I'm not going to do it when ESPN Plus is half the price. I get replays of the games, I get all sorts of other content, live TV. And it's like just a couple conferences here that use it.
it's true.
I have no use for it. I would love to watch Drexel for $30 a month in a bad product. I'm not going to do it.
No. I don't blame you. I'm not blaming you.
Not going to do it.
Will not blame you.
But we could be here all night
I know.
before we're here till midnight, Kyle, and we go for 2 hours.
I know. By the way, it is the Ocean First Bank Center in Monmouth.
I was close.
That was you were close. I looked
I was
up. It was the one you had mentioned before, the Ocean Bank Arena. There's an Ocean Bank Convocation Center in University Park, Miami, Florida. FIU. That's their
okay.
I think
I'll take.
basketball arena. No, I think that's just like their auditorium of some sorts.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I'll take hyper obscure basketball knowledge for 800, Alex.
yeah,
That nobody would ever need to know.
no, no. That's kind of why we're here, though, is it not?
Yeah.
That's a part of our whole thing.
This is what we do.
That's what we do. All right,
100%.
Cope, we got games this week. Obviously, this is being filmed on Tuesday, so the LaSalle VCU game already happened. We don't need to talk about it. They got smoked. They got absolutely smoked. It was a drubbing. VCU, that's a tournament team. So we don't even need to go further, I don't think. But the rest of the week, we've got some good games coming up here. Drexel does play again on Thursday, Cope, but they're not the only game on Thursday. So we can go through a couple of these games here, but what's one game you're looking for in particular? I know you're going to be going to a couple of them. So what's one game in particular that you want to tell the people about?
Yeah, I mean, I want to touch on William and Mary, the tribe coming to Drexel on Thursday. I'll be there for that. Going to have to crusade through the snow and the ice to get there. But I was able to watch this team yesterday because thank God they were not on Flow Sports. They were on CBS. They were on
You
CBS
can't let
Sports
it go.
Network. So I was able to watch them play Charleston. A shorthanded Charleston is that at that missing AJ Smith and missing Daywell Tavares, but the tribe are exciting, man, and they play a fun style. And they have it. Brian Earl comes over from Cornell, brings that fun style with him to the CAA. This is a tough job, Kyle. William and Mary's been tournament eligible since 1939. You know how many tournament appearances they have?
I'm going to guess this many.
That's correct. They have
That's a
none.
goose egg for the people listening on the audio versions.
This was a 10-win team last year that included that if you include last night's win over Charleston, they got 14 now. It's happening pretty quickly for Mr. Earl. You want a Big Five connection? How about former Temple assistant coach Jimmy Fennerty? He's his second season there. He stayed there through the coaching change, so he's in his second season there. I'll tie Big Five in, of course, whenever I
Always.
can.
Anything.
But a little bit about this style, some stats on him. William and Mary, third fastest pace on offense, 24th fastest pace overall. That patented run and gun, play at a blistering pace, get up and down, put pressure on your style that Brian Earl played at Cornell that was successful. They're going to press on defense, throw a lot of different things at you. It's a very, very fun style to watch. And they're going to put up a lot of threes, man. They're going to do it. Third highest rate nationally, nearly 52% of their field goal attempts are threes. They're putting them up. Don't care who's guarding them, who's watching. And although they're just 130th nationally in three-point percentage, they're going to make you pay from inside the arc, and they're going to get to the basket. 42nd in effective field goal percentage, 14th best two-point field goal percentage. Isn't that interesting? How much they put up threes, it's going to free inside for them. 57.8% field goal percentage inside the three-point line, too. So they're efficient when they get there, and they make you pay. So they throw a lot of stuff for you. They're going to keep you on your toes. You're so worried about the three ball. If you're going to overextend and you're going to overhelp, like they're going to punish you inside the line. 12 games this year where they've made 10 plus threes. If you want to say 13 where they beat Virginia Lynchburg, who's not in D1, sure. I did not include that one.
No,
But
that's
12 D1 games, they made 10 plus threes last night included. Ivy League influence still strong with Mr. Earl and the tribe. He brought Keller Boothby from Cornell with him, 6'7" sharpshooter. Also brought Malachi Endor from Brown. So the Ivy League connection is still very much strong with William and Mary. And guess what? I'll do you one better, Kai. You want another one?
give
The
it to me.
starting point guard freshman Isaiah Mbeng is the younger brother of Bez Mbeng from Yale, who, shocker, he leads his team in steals as well for William and Mary. And then they're
You're
led
different.
by Gabe Dorsey, 6'6" senior 40s in his third year at William and Mary. He stayed through the coaching change. A lot of their contributors stayed through the coaching change at William and Mary. I think that's also a something that shouldn't go without, you know, not being said about Brian Earl, is that he kept guys here that are producing and that are still helping this team win. So you have Gabe and his brother Caleb. Caleb transferred from Penn State. He's in his second year there. Gabe is in his third season there, leads them in scoring. So I like this team a lot. It's a fun style. Kyle, like, I get it. I'm a sicko. William and Mary, like,
I'm
who
playing
cares?
good ball.
They're having a good season in the
Yeah.
CAA. People were excited. There was a good crowd yesterday. Um, Deep team, probably going to play 10, 11 guys Thursday night. So you got to scout thoroughly. You got to be on your toes. You need to be hands up, ready to contest threes. You need to protect the ball. They're going to press you. A very fun style that's going to put a ton of pressure on the opponent. We'll see how Drexel fares, but tough weekend for them. They got William and Mary Thursday, UNC Wilmington, who's won 6 straight in the conference, coming Saturday. So they get him at home, but after two losses at the death, because then they lost 55-54 to Towson on Saturday. Two really tough games here for Drexel, but I'll be there. That'll be my first of 4 games throughout the week and weekend, but I'll be there Thursday night and very much looking forward to it against a very fun opponent. I texted Riley Frayne about it, read an article that him and Sam Fetterman had written on them, and he said to me, he's like, you're going to have fun watching them. So very much looking forward to Thursday.
Me as well. I think I will be there as well for that one. So very excited for that. Potentially my first time at the DAC too. So that is a treat. Don't know how it hasn't happened yet, but that is a treat as well. Cope, obviously you mentioned the 9 p.m. tip for St. Joe's St. Louis. That's going to be a really, really great one. And I was going to go with that. And then I remembered that there are other events happening in the city of Philadelphia or involving city of Philadelphia teams on Sunday. Probably the most important events to the city of Philadelphia on Sunday. Um, and of course, that would be Temple traveling to Memphis. They're not hosting, but traveling to Memphis to take on the Tigers of Memphis. And listen, this is a huge game. This is the biggest game of the season so far for Temple, and I think that even includes their home win over Memphis. Obviously, that was the precursor to this. Memphis got thoroughly dominated on the boards in that game. They didn't shoot that great. Temple played a really great game in their own right. But as we've talked about before in this podcast and on Spaces, Temple is undefeated at home this year. They are 10-0 at home this year. So can they improve their road record? Right now is 4-8. Obviously, this is the toughest test they're going to have on the road, and they've played some good road teams so far too. Obviously, they were at North Texas and at UTSA, which didn't end up going well for them either of those games. But this is going to be a huge test for them. Memphis is a very, very, very good team. The only conference loss that Memphis has is to Temple, and they're going to want some revenge on their home floor. But hopefully, Temple can start to figure out some of their road woes because running on the road, as we always say, it's so hard in college sports. It's particularly in college basketball. But if they can prove that they can win on the road, win against the best team in the conference, most talented team in the conference, they're not 100% at the top right now. I think they have some company up there with UAB. UAB's one back in the loss column, but they both have 8 wins in the conference. But this would be a very impressive win for Temple. And Temple's been playing very good basketball, definitely the most consistent basketball in the Big Five since the Big Five Classic, to be honest with you. So this is going to be a really, really good game. I'm excited for this one. Definitely the most important sporting events involving City of Philadelphia that day. Obviously, also Villanova hosting Xavier and LaSalle hosting UMass. And then other games earlier in the week as well. We talked about the Villanova VCU or LaSalle VCU, obviously. Villanova traveling to Chicago to take on DePaul Wednesday at 9 p.m. Hope you mentioned the Drexel William and Mary game. At same time and same night, Temple's traveling to South Florida to take on the Bulls there at 7 p.m. And then on Friday as well, we have Penn hosting Princeton at the Palestra. Hopefully, Penn can keep their winning side of the rivalry going. It's getting way, way, way too close in that rivalry. So, a lot going on. And of course, Kobe mentioned too the 2 p.m. Drexel UNCW game, which that's a premier team in the conference. So, that's going to be a good atmosphere there at the DAC. And hopefully, Drexel can go back to back at the DAC this week. I just rhymed. Didn't mean to. Um, all right, Cope. Any final thoughts before we sign off here?
I want to touch on Penn Princeton really quick. I want to thank
Okay.
Jonathan Tannenwald, who joined our spaces, who has been joining our spaces on Sundays. Jonathan, as a Penn grad, hit us with these stats. So when you on the East Concourse of Palestra, when you walk in that back door, that's where I used to walk in to go to work. First thing you'd see is that Penn Princeton scoreboard right to the right of the ramp to go down by the visitors' locker room. Currently sits at Penn 126, Princeton 124. Kyle Penn has never trailed all time in the series. Think about that. 250 games, they have never been on the losing side, so to speak, of these series. They have never not had as many wins in the series as Princeton has. A season sweep from Princeton would tie the score, of course, at 126. The first ever tie between these schools since it was 3-3 in 1905. We could see something that hasn't been done in 100 years by season's end. Jonathan also pointed out these are all his stats. I was texting with him and he clarified a lot of this for me. February 2009, the score was 122-97. That 25 win margin for Penn was the largest lead for either team. Princeton is currently, they're on an 11-game winning streak. They've been Penn's kind of kryptonite in the Ivy League, if you will. That's the longest winning streak in the series. Penn had a 10-game win streak in the 1930s that has now been upended by Princeton.
Oh.
So, an all-time rivalry, a ton of games, 251st meeting, and Princeton could find themselves atop that leaderboard, tied with it at the end of this season, and they could potentially be going for their first ever league come next year. So I want to thank Jonathan for joining our spaces, for giving me those stats. Quite the history there. How about that?
Yeah. How about that indeed? And yeah, shout out Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer. He's the man. Um, it's an insane thing. They gotta win one. They gotta at least win one this year. We cannot let that series be tied for the first time in 100 years, Cope. 100 years. That is number one. It's impressive that the rivalry's gone on that long. I mean, you mentioned the 251st game, 252nd later in the year. It's awesome, but there's obviously a significant side. It was significantly one-sided for a long time, and now it just seems to have caught up. So hopefully Penn can pull that one out on Friday at 7 p.m. with the Plusher. And if you're interested in that rivalry, interested in that game, go to the Plusher, support the Quakers. How about it? Obviously, if you're a Princeton fan, you have the right to go too, but I'd prefer if you didn't, because Penn's trying to win this game, keep that margin going a little bit. So. Yeah, we'll see what happens there. I don't know if any final thoughts from me. I guess there is, as I've alluded to a couple times, a Super Bowl going on Sunday, so that'll be interesting. Neither of us are Eagles fans, but uh, I personally have not seen my team play in the playoffs since 2011, January of 2011. I was in sixth grade, and so yeah, every time the calendar starts January, February, I kind of have to change my shade of green a little bit to have some sort of rooting interest. So. I guess I'm pulling for the Birds. We'll say go Birds here, Cope. I don't know if you feel the same way. Although you were on Broad Street a couple years ago when they won the NFC Championship, we were both there. But should be a very, very good game. And either Eagles win their second Super Bowl, the Chiefs had the first three-peat in NFL history. So an historic day either way. Also, real quick, not that I want to get too much into it, but I feel like we can't be a basketball-centered podcast and not talk about anything about the Luka AD trade. Where were you when that happened? Actually, I think I know where you were, but just real quick, like what the hell? Like what?
Oh yeah, I was driving. Yeah, I was driving home from I'll drive home from Xfinity. I'll be honest, I mean, I haven't tuned into the NBA at all this year. Like I'm dialed in on college and
Yeah, of
remain that way
course.
until the season's over. But yeah, probably the worst trade. Um, maybe I think maybe it's one you could look back on whenever the respective careers of AD and Luka over and be like that was probably the worst one ever. I think you could look at that like you can look at a Russell Wilson trade or a Deshaun Watson trade where people just gave up a ton for a guy who was a lemon. But I mean, just to let a guy in like the prime of his career, who's the face of the league, like walk like that, crazy. You
Yeah.
see what like KD got, what did somebody trade for Harden? What did the Nets trade for James Harden? What did the Suns trade for Kevin Durant? Like, okay, like Luka in his prime at 25, coming off a finals run, like that's what you got back for him. And I'm preaching to the choir because everybody's doing is just slaughtering Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison. So I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said, but yeah, wild stuff. I mean, legitimately one of the biggest trades in potentially sports, certainly in the NBA.
Yeah. I think I was in an Uber home from Xfinity, so kind of a similar thing. Uh, I think like probably the most shock factor transaction I think I've ever seen, at least in the NBA, if not in general. Um, I was just in complete and utter disbelief when that happened. I still am. I don't like it's just like one of those weirdest things. I think the only thing like NBA wise that probably came close to it was the night that Kawhi and Paul George teamed up to go to the Clippers. That was probably like the one thing where I was like, oh my God. Um, yeah, wild times we're living in. But had to mention that a little bit because obviously we are a basketball podcast, but we're a college basketball podcast. Luka didn't play in college. And Anthony Davis's Kentucky team got smoked by Ole Miss tonight, of us recording this. So anyway, Cope, that was episode 108. Thank you, of course, for your help and everything, and continuing to be the biggest cheerleader of the Big Five. You and I both, and Aaron Bracey. I mean, there's a bunch of us, but uh, glad to be back at it for sure. After our tiny little hiatus here in the middle of the season, but shout out to you guys as well for tuning in. Make sure you keep tuning in to these episodes. You know where to find them on YouTube and the audio only versions on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Make sure you also tune into the Big Five Spaces show every Sunday night. Not going to happen this Sunday, obviously, because of the Super Bowl. Regardless of who was playing in it, it wasn't going to happen anyway. But we'll be back next week for our regularly scheduled Spaces show. And make sure you tune in that as well, of course. And yeah, social media, you know where to find us too at Big Five Pod on Instagram and on Twitter. And with that, thank you all for tuning in. We will see you next time.